10 NHL arenas that no longer exist. The Montreal Forum. Simply referred to as the Forum, the Montreal Forum was an iconic hockey arena steeped in history and tradition. It was referred to as the most storied building in hockey history by Sporting News, serving as the home of the Montreal Maroons and the Montreal Canadiens. The arena, built in 1924 by the Canadian Arena Company in just 159 days, was a place where one could feel the unwavering passion for the sport of hockey upon entering its 18,000-seat arena. The Montreal Forum was host to numerous Stanley Cup finals, including 26 between 1926 and 1993. The 1980 NHL entry draft was also hosted at the Forum, marking the first time an NHL arena had hosted such an event. As the NHL continued to grow, the Canadiens organisation made the decision to relocate to the more modern Bell Centre in 1996. The arena was later transformed into a downtown entertainment centre called the Pepsi Forum, featuring theatres, shops and restaurants. Boston Garden. Boston Garden opened on November 17, 1928, and was the home of the Boston Bruins for 67 years. It was a place where hockey history was made, with its compact and intimate seating, electrifying atmosphere and passionate fans. The Garden's hockey rink was small compared to the standard, measuring 191 by 83 feet, 9 feet shorter and 2 feet narrower than the typical 200 by 85 foot rink. This was due to the lack of standard size for rinks when it was built. But the Garden made up for its size with its historical significance, hosting numerous Stanley Cup finals, including 2 Bruins championships in 1939 and 1970, as well as the NHL All-Star Game in 1971. In 1957, it made history as the first arena to host both the Stanley Cup Final and NBA Finals at the same time. Unfortunately, in the later years of its life, the Garden was plagued by problems. 2 of the Bruins Stanley Cup Final appearances in 1988 and 1990 were disrupted by power outages, including a switchgear failure during Game 4 in 1988 and a lights-out situation in overtime in 1990. In 1995, the Bruins said goodbye to the Garden and moved to the modern and spacious TD Garden. Boston Garden was eventually demolished and is currently a commercial development called the Hub on Causeway. The OMNI. The iconic OMNI was the home of the Atlanta Flames from the time of their creation in 1972 until 1980, when the franchise was sold and relocated to Calgary, Alberta. It was a marvel of its time, with its futuristic architecture and state-of-the-art features that earned it a reputation as one of the most innovative venues in the country. The OMNI was renowned for its unique space frame roof, which was jokingly referred to as an egg crate or rusty waffle iron. The dynamic atmosphere and passionate crowd made it a beloved staple of Atlanta's athletic heritage. Unfortunately, the OMNI didn't have the same longevity as other arenas built during the same era, partly due to some of its innovative features not functioning as planned. The most prominent issue was the weather-beaten steel exterior, which couldn't withstand Atlanta's humid climate, causing it to rust much faster than expected. In response, many NHL teams started constructing new arenas with more luxurious amenities for high-end customers, such as a vast number of luxury boxes, club seating, and grand club concourses. In contrast, the OMNI only had 16 luxury boxes and no club level, which put it at a disadvantage as Atlanta's population rapidly expanded. On July 26, 1997, the OMNI was eventually imploded, making way for the construction of the Phillips Arena, which opened its doors on September 18, 1999. The Met Center. The Met Center a one-of-a-kind indoor arena in Bloomington, Minnesota, was a renowned landmark for many years. Built in 1967, it served as the home of the Minnesota North Stars, a team in the NHL, until 1993. It was regarded as one of the best arenas in the NHL, known for its fast ice, superior lighting, and impressive locker rooms and training facilities. Fans appreciated the arena's exceptional sightlines and enjoyed the liveliness of the games. Despite its lack of extravagant amenities, the Met Center stood out as a classic venue in the hearts of many. It hosted the 25th National Hockey League All-Star Game in 1972 and was the stage for both the 1981 and 1991 Stanley Cup Finals, though the North Stars were unable to secure a win in either of these events. Unfortunately, the arena is also remembered for the tragic death of Bill Masterton of the North Stars, who suffered a fatal head injury during a game against the Oakland Seals on January 13, 1968. This was the first and only fatality in NHL history. After the North Stars moved to Dallas and became the Dallas Stars in 1993, the Met Center was ultimately demolished on December 13, 1994, in a series of 3 controlled implosions. The Spectrum. The Spectrum made its grand debut in September 1967 and was hailed as Philadelphia's first state-of-the-art indoor sports arena. Built to be the home of the new Philadelphia Flyers, the Spectrum quickly became a staple in the city's sports history. On May 19, 1974, the Flyers won their first ever Stanley Cup on the Spectrum's ice, with a 1-0 victory over the Boston Bruins in Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Finals. The Spectrum was also host to the Flyers' numerous Stanley Cup final appearances in the 70s and 80s. One of the most historic hockey games ever held at the arena took place on January 11, 1976, when the Flyers defeated the Soviet Central Red Army 4-1 in a Cold War showdown. The 1976 and 1992 NHL All-Star Games were also hosted at the Spectrum. Despite its lack of luxury suites and modern amenities common in newer arenas, the Spectrum was treasured by sports fans for its fast-paced games and emotional moments. However, its seating configuration and obstructed views were a source of criticism. In 2009, the Flyers moved to the larger Wells Fargo Center, leaving the Spectrum to close its doors. It was eventually demolished in 2011, leaving behind a legacy of unforgettable memories in Philadelphia. Chicago Stadium. The Chicago Stadium was the epicenter of sports in Chicago from 1929 to 1994. This towering arena, with its cavernous interior that could seat 18,000 fans, was once the largest indoor arena in the world. The stadium saw some of the most historic moments in NHL history, including the largest recorded crowd for a playoff game between the Chicago Blackhawks and the Minnesota North Stars in 1982, which was attended by 20,069 spectators. This temple of hockey was also one of the last NHL arenas to keep time using an analog dial type clock, a nod to a bygone era. And with its shorter than regulation ice surface, the Chicago Stadium was a true throwback to a different time in the sport's history. The rivalry between the Blackhawks and the Detroit Red Wings reached a fever pitch at the Chicago Stadium, and it was here that the Blackhawks won their 1934 and 1938 Stanley Cup titles. The stadium also played host to 3 NHL All-Star games, but after the Blackhawks moved to the United Center, the Chicago Stadium was reduced to rubble in 1995. The demolition was televised by CNN and sparked tears from die-hard Blackhawks and Bulls fans who watched as the wrecking ball took down the beloved arena. Today, the site of the Chicago Stadium serves as a parking lot for the United Center located across the street. St. Louis Arena. St. Louis Arena was once the second largest indoor entertainment venue in the country. The arena opened its doors in 1929 and was the home of the NHL St. Louis Blues and other sports franchises. With a seating capacity of almost 20,000, the arena was known for its impeccable sightlines and ear-deafening noise level, which made it a fan favourite. It was during the 1967-68 season that the Blues first took the ice at the arena, but the venue was in dire need of renovation. Despite its less than ideal condition, the Blues charged forward, skating to the Stanley Cup Finals in 1968, 69 and 70, only to fall short against the Montreal Canadiens in 1968 and 1969. Over the years, the arena was continually updated, becoming a fortress for the Blues and their fans. The arena played host to some of hockey's greatest legends, including Hall of Famer Bernie Federico and Brian Suter, and was the site of the 1975 NCAA Frozen Four Ice Hockey Finals. It was a place where memories were made and dreams were chased. Sadly, all good things must come to an end, and the Blues played their final game at the arena on April 24, 1994, losing 2-1 to the Dallas Stars. The team then moved on to the Enterprise Center, and the St. Louis Arena was eventually demolished in 1999 to make way for a mixed-use development. Civic Arena. The Pittsburgh Civic Arena was a true spectacle of architecture, standing tall as a timeless emblem of the city. With its dome-shaped canopy and cutting-edge design, the arena was renowned as one of the most iconic venues in the NHL during its prime. From 1967 to 2010, it was the home ice for the Pittsburgh Penguins, accommodating up to 16,000 fans for each game. The Civic Arena was host to numerous historic moments in the NHL, including the 41st All-Star Game, the 1997 entry draft, and several pivotal games in Stanley Cup finals. It was the site of the Penguins' first Stanley Cup victory in 1991, when they defeated the Minnesota North Stars and captured the coveted trophy for the first time in franchise history. However, the Civic Arena's reign came to an end in 2011 as the Pittsburgh Penguins made their move to the Consol Energy Center. The Civic Center was demolished in 2011, and the former arena site was transformed into expanded public parking. Detroit Olympia. The Detroit Olympia, also known as the Old Red Barn, was a legendary hockey arena that housed the Detroit Red Wings from its grand opening in 1927 to 1979. With a seating capacity that rivaled only Madison Square Garden and the London Olympia, the Olympia was a symbol of hockey excellence, showcasing some of the greatest players in the sport's history. From the opening puck drop, the Detroit Red Wings were the primary tenants of the arena. Initially known as the Cougars before becoming the Falcons and finally the Red Wings in 1932, under the ownership of James E. Norris. With the likes of Gordie Howe, Ted Lindsay, Sid Abel, Alex Del Vecchio and Terry Sawchuk leading the charge, the Red Wings dominated the NHL with 7 consecutive first-place finishes and 4 Stanley Cup championships from 1949 to 1956. Not only did the Olympia play host to the Red Wings' on-ice success, but it also served as the site for the NHL All-Star Games in 1950, 52, 54 and 1955. Despite its hockey prowess, the arena's location in a declining neighbourhood since the 1967 riots led to its eventual demise, as the Red Wings announced their departure in 1977. The final home game at the Olympia, a 4-4 tie against the Quebec Nordiques, was attended by 15,609 passionate fans. The Detroit Olympia was eventually demolished in September 1987, and today the Michigan National Guard's Olympia Armory stands in its place. Madison Square Garden, 1925. Madison Square Garden 3 was a landmark in New York sports history, serving as the home of the New York Rangers for over 40 years. However, the Rangers were not the first NHL team to play at MSG. That distinction belongs to the New York Americans, who began playing there in 1925. the Americans officially opened the Garden with a 3-1 loss to the Montreal Canadiens in front of 17,000 fans, and both teams continued to call MSG home until the Americans suspended operation during World War II in 1942. Despite starting their tenure at the Garden a year later in 1926, the Rangers quickly established themselves as a dominant force in the NHL, winning 3 Stanley Cups between 1928 and 1940. Nevertheless, by the 1950s, the Garden had become outdated, leading to plans for a replacement arena. The new Madison Square Garden was finally completed in 1968, with the Rangers playing their final game at the old venue on February 11, 1968, a 3-3 tie against the Detroit Red Wings. The old Garden was demolished later that year, and the Worldwide Plaza now stands on the site. Which of these arenas was your favourite?